There is a moment in every system's life when denial quietly turns into inevitability. Not because someone announces it, not because headlines scream it, but because the numbers stop obeying hope. Europe is standing exactly at that moment. What we are about to talk about is not speculation, ideology, or political opinion. It is mathematics. Cold. Patient. For decades, Europeans were taught to believe in a promise that felt unbreakable. Work hard, contribute faithfully, and when your working years end, the system will take care of you. That promise shaped lives, careers, and entire societies. But promises only survive when the structure beneath them remains intact. And today, that structure is cracking across the continent. Behind the speeches, beyond the protests, and underneath the reassuring language used by leaders, official data from Europe's own institutions tells a darker story. Pension systems that once symbolized stability are now drifting toward a point where survival itself becomes uncertain. This is not a distant future problem. In many countries, the crisis is already unfolding in real time, quietly draining public finances and shifting unbearable pressure onto younger generations. In this analysis, based strictly on verified demographic and fiscal data, we rank 10 European countries whose pension systems are approaching a breaking point faster than most people realize. But stay with us until the end, because the ranking itself is only the surface. The real revelation lies deeper. 3 hidden mechanisms connect every single country on this list, regardless of culture, wealth, or political system. And those mechanisms expose a truth that almost no leader is willing to say out loud. This is not about fear. This is about understanding what comes next. Number 10. Germany. Germany is often portrayed as Europe's financial anchor, the responsible adult in the room. But beneath this image of order and discipline, the German pension system is already running on emergency support. In the year 2024, roughly 1/4 of the entire federal budget was used simply to plug the gap between pension contributions and pension payments. That shortfall required more than 117 billion euros from general taxation. And according to projections from the Bundesbank, that number will climb to around 133 billion euros by the end of 2025. This is not a future warning. This is a present-day rescue operation. The core issue is not mismanagement, it is demographics. Germany is aging faster than its workforce can replace itself. By the year 2036, when retirements and new labor market entrants are compared, the country will have roughly 7 million fewer workers. That is close to 9% of the entire workforce simply disappearing. Today, 100 working Germans support 35 pensioners. By 2050, that figure will rise to 55. No tax system, no productivity gain, no political slogan can neutralize that shift. The response from policymakers has been cautious to the point of symbolic. Rather than confronting the structural imbalance, the government proposed a small monthly savings incentive for children, hoping that over several decades it might grow into something meaningful. Labor unions themselves criticized the move, arguing that it diverts attention from the immediate crisis. At the same time, lawmakers locked pension benefits into law, guaranteeing that payments will not fall below 48% of average wages until 2031. For today's retirees, this offers reassurance. For tomorrow's workers, it represents a bill they will be forced to pay. To maintain this benefit level, contributions must rise. Currently, German workers contribute 18.6% of their gross income. Official forecasts show this climbing above 22% by the mid-30s. That increase comes directly out of younger workers' earnings, reducing their disposable income to preserve promises made decades earlier. Germany's system survives today not because it is balanced, but because it is being continuously propped up. Stability is no longer organic. It is engineered. Number 9. Poland. On paper, Poland looks strong. Economic growth, manageable public debt, and rising wages create the image of a success story. But pensions are where the illusion breaks. In 2017, while much of Europe was gradually raising retirement ages, Poland went in the opposite direction. Retirement was lowered to 60 for women and 65 for men. It was a politically popular move, designed for immediate approval rather than long-term sustainability. The consequences are now unavoidable. According to projections, the number of pensioners per 100 workers will nearly double by mid-century. What is already a strain will soon become a structural crisis. But demographics are only half the story. For years, Polish workers contributed to a mixed pension system. Part of their money went to the state, based on future promises, and part went into private accounts, backed by real invested assets. In 2014, during an effort to present healthier public finances to European authorities, the government transferred a massive portion of those private savings into the public system. Roughly 150 billion zlotys were effectively exchanged for future promises. Assets with growth potential were replaced by accounting entries. The result is devastating for younger generations. According to international projections, Someone entering the workforce in Poland today can expect a pension worth only about 1/4 of their final salary. That means a worker earning €2,000 at the end of their career would retire on roughly €500 per month. Poland's growth story masks a future where millions face old age with sharply reduced security. The system did not collapse suddenly. It was quietly hollowed out. Number 8. Finland. Finland is often cited as a model of good governance. Its pension system is technically sophisticated, well-funded, and automatically adjusts retirement age based on life expectancy. Yet it appears on this list for a simple reason. Even perfection cannot defeat arithmetic. In recent years, Finland recorded the lowest number of births in its modern history. At the same time, tens of thousands of new pensioners entered the system. For every 100 new retirees, only 75 potential future workers were born. That imbalance is catastrophic. Currently, the dependency ratio sits below 40%. By mid-century, it is projected to exceed 60%. This shift forces the system to rely on an automatic adjustment known as the life expectancy coefficient. As people live longer, the value of new pensions quietly decreases. No protest. No vote. No debate. A young worker contributing the same amount as previous generations will simply receive less. The system preserves itself by lowering future living standards. Finland shows us something critical. Even the best-designed pension system cannot survive a sustained collapse in births. Management matters, but demographics decide the outcome. Number 7. Belgium. Belgium's pension problem did not begin with aging. It began with debt. For nearly 4 decades, public debt has hovered around or above 100% of national output. That debt consumes enormous resources through interest payments alone, limiting the state's ability to absorb future shocks. Now, demographics are adding pressure. Official projections show pension spending rising dramatically as a share of national output over the coming decades. Yet, meaningful reform remains stalled. The most recent changes focused on modest bonuses for extended work rather than confronting the system's structural costs. Belgium is trapped. Debt limits flexibility. Aging increases expenses. And higher taxes on labor risk slowing growth further. The system survives by postponement, not by solution. Number 6. Portugal. Portugal sits at the center of Europe's most dangerous combination: severe aging and weak economic growth. By 2050, Portugal is expected to have the highest ratio of pensioners to workers in the European Union. Fewer than 1.5 workers will support each retiree. This outcome is not only the result of low birth rates. During the financial crisis, hundreds of thousands of young, skilled workers left the country permanently. The tax base shrank, and the future workforce vanished. Reforms linked pensions to life expectancy, reducing benefits as longevity increases. In theory, this improves sustainability. In practice, it means deep cuts in a country where wages are already among the lowest in Western Europe. International forecasts show replacement rates falling dramatically. Future retirees will receive far less, calculated from already modest salaries. Portugal's system is not collapsing loudly. It is shrinking quietly. Number 5. Spain. Spain's pension story begins with optimism and ends with depletion. At the dawn of the 2000s, during years of rapid growth and rising employment, Spain did something that looked wise and responsible. It created a pension reserve fund, often described as a national piggy bank. The idea was simple: save excess contributions during good years so the system could withstand the retirement of the baby boom generation later on. At its peak, that reserve held nearly €67 billion. Today, it is essentially gone. Year after year, as unemployment rose and revenues weakened, the fund was drained to pay current pensions. What was meant to be a shield against the future became a temporary life support for the present. Once emptied, the system was left exposed. That exposure coincided with 2 accelerating pressures. The first is debt. Since the aftermath of the financial crisis, Spain's public debt has remained consistently above 100% of national output. This limits the government's ability to absorb pension deficits without resorting to higher taxes or borrowing. The second is demographics. Spain is aging rapidly. Today, roughly 31 pensioners rely on every 100 workers. By the middle of the century, that number will approach 60. This shift alone would strain even a well-funded system. Spain no longer has that luxury. Faced with this reality, policymakers stood at a crossroads. One path involved an automatic sustainability mechanism. As life expectancy increased, pensions would gradually adjust downward. It was an impersonal solution, but mathematically effective. The other path prioritized protecting current pension levels from erosion. That option was politically safer, especially in a country where pensions support entire families. This path was chosen. But abandoning automatic adjustment did not make the cost disappear. It simply moved it elsewhere. To fill the resulting gap, a new mechanism was introduced that permanently increased contributions paid by workers and employers. In practice, future benefit reductions were replaced with immediate higher costs for those still working. Spain's system now rests on a silent transfer. Current retirees are shielded. Younger generations pay more, earn less net income, and face an uncertain retirement of their own. The balance has not been restored. It has been deferred. Number 4. France. In France, pensions are more than a financial arrangement. They are a symbol of social identity. For decades, France maintained one of the lowest retirement ages in Europe, defended fiercely as a social right earned through collective struggle. But that right was designed for a very different demographic reality. Today, pension spending absorbs close to 15% of the entire economy. Public debt continues to rise, projected well above 110% of national output. And the population is aging fast. By 2050, the number of pensioners per 100 workers will rise from 35 to nearly 57. This trajectory forced action. The government introduced a reform raising the retirement age from 62 to 64. It was framed as essential for survival. The reaction was explosive. Millions protested. Strikes paralyzed cities. The nation split into opposing camps. Behind the political drama, official assessments delivered a sobering verdict. The pension system is not on the verge of sudden collapse, but it runs a persistent and growing structural deficit. Each year, it spends more than it collects. Each year, the gap widens. The reform did not solve this imbalance. It slowed it. Financial markets noticed. Rating agencies downgraded French debt, explicitly citing political paralysis and the difficulty of implementing long-term reforms. The message was subtle but firm. Generosity without demographic support cannot last indefinitely. France illustrates a painful dilemma. When pensions are woven deeply into national identity, reform becomes not just an economic challenge, but a cultural confrontation. The system survives for now, but at the cost of rising tension and shrinking flexibility. Number 3. Austria. Austria's pension crisis is hidden behind prosperity. On the surface, the country appears stable. Public debt remains below national output. Living standards are high. Social cohesion seems strong. Yet year after year, international assessments rank Austria's pension system among the least sustainable in Europe. The reason lies beneath the surface. Austria's pension promises are extraordinarily generous, and they are not self-financing. Each year, the government must transfer roughly 24 billion euros from general taxation just to keep the system running. That amount represents almost 1/4 of total pension spending. Those funds are not coming from pension contributions. They are being diverted from healthcare, education, infrastructure, and innovation. The structural weakness is compounded by early retirement. Although the official retirement age is 65, the effective retirement age is closer to 61. Special pathways and exemptions allow workers to exit the labor force years earlier than in most comparable countries. Every attempt to close these pathways meets fierce resistance. The political cost of reform is immediate. The financial cost of inaction is delayed. As a result, delay wins. Demographics add pressure. The dependency ratio will rise sharply over the coming decades, increasing the need for transfers from general taxation. Austria's system does not appear broken because wealth temporarily masks the problem. But the underlying trajectory is already fixed. Without structural change, the burden on future taxpayers will intensify year after year. Number 2. Greece. Greece is not approaching a pension crisis. It is living the aftermath of one. Years of excessive borrowing, weak enforcement, and political denial culminated in a debt explosion. Today, public debt stands at roughly 150% of national output. That burden forced a series of externally imposed reforms, unlike anything seen elsewhere in Europe. Pensions were cut repeatedly. Retirement ages were raised to 67. Benefits were recalculated under harsher formulas. On paper, the system now appears sustainable. Official projections even show pension spending falling as a share of the economy over time. But sustainability came at a price. Future pensions have been legislated at dramatically lower levels. Replacement rates collapsed. The system balanced its books by sacrificing adequacy. At the same time, the economic collapse triggered a mass exodus of young people. Nearly 500,000 left the country, draining the future workforce and tax base. Demographics deliver the final blow. By mid-century, Greece will have fewer than 1.5 workers per pensioner. The result is a paradox. The system survives financially, but only by offering future retirees a far weaker promise. Greece shows what happens when mathematics is ignored for too long and then enforced all at once. Number 1. Italy. Italy represents the perfect storm. It combines three of the most destructive forces a pension system can face: massive public debt, collapsing demographics, and extraordinarily high pension spending. Public debt is projected near 137% of national output. Interest payments alone consume close to 80 billion euros every year. That money is gone before a single pension is paid. Pension spending absorbs more than 16% of the economy. To cover the gap between contributions and payments, the state transfers over 140 billion euros annually from general taxation. Then comes demographics. Italy is experiencing one of the deepest demographic winters in the developed world. Births have fallen to historic lows. The dependency ratio is already the highest in continental Europe and is projected to rise beyond 66% by mid-century. Faced with this emergency, a major reform was introduced more than a decade ago. It linked retirement age to life expectancy and based pensions entirely on lifetime contributions rather than final salaries. Mathematically, it made sense. Socially, it sparked outrage. Subsequent governments softened the rules through temporary early retirement measures. These exceptions eased short-term tension but undermined long-term sustainability. Italy now oscillates between discipline imposed by arithmetic and concessions driven by political pressure. The system is neither fully reformed nor fully protected. It is suspended in an unstable equilibrium. Italy is not an outlier. It is the clearest expression of what happens when every warning sign flashes at once. The three red threads. Across these 10 countries, three fundamental mechanisms repeat relentlessly. The first is the collapse of the intergenerational pact. Pension systems were built on the assumption that each generation would be larger, or at least as large as the previous one. That assumption no longer holds. To keep promises, governments borrowed, debt replaced births. Today, that debt must be serviced by fewer workers, shrinking their wages and opportunities. The second is the illusion of endless reform. Governments announce changes, delay consequences, and declare victory. But most reforms were designed to survive election cycles, not demographic cycles. They postponed pain rather than eliminating it. The problem grew in the shadows. The third is the mismatch between the system and reality. Pay-as-you-go pensions were designed for a world of rapid growth and rising populations. Today, people live longer, have fewer children, and economies grow more slowly. Running the old system under new conditions is like using an outdated map in a changing landscape. None of this means pensions should disappear. A dignified old age is a fundamental right. But the numbers make one thing clear. Protecting that right for some has increasingly come at the expense of others. We have reached the mathematical limit of the old model. The question is no longer whether change is needed. The question is what kind of new contract between generations can replace a promise that no longer holds. That debate has barely begun.